This is my MakerChip, my 3D printed calling card that packs a spicy secret. I designed this whole thing right in Bambu Studio without ever opening a CAD program. No fusion, no nothing, just some sickening slicer hacks that you can try yourself right now. That's not the secret, by the way. I literally buried something inside every chip. If you ran into me at OpenSauce 2024, you probably have one of these already, but if you don't, well, keep watching because I'm going to give away over 500 more. I'm Zack Freedman, and the chips don't lie. You're watching Voidstar Lab. Ladies, gentlemen, and cyborgs, this video is a little bit late because until quite recently I was dying. A few weeks ago, Brooke and I went to San Fran for the very second OpenSauce, and we met hundreds of awesome fans, crashed the souped up Power Wheels, and nearly murdered Tom Scott with a USB power bank while climbing Mark Rober's vending machine. It's a long story. We returned with a cornucopia of swag, pages of project ideas, and a virulent case of the Rona that reduced us to mucus-spewing plague zombies for almost 2 straight weeks. But I don't want to talk about what we brought back. I want to talk about what we gave away. I came to my senses this year and decided not to run a booth, but I still wanted to leave fans with something more tangible than selfies. Problem was, I spent all the prep time printing chocolate Nerf blasters. So I thought, what could be easier to design than a no CAD challenge? Traumatized grown with 1,000-yard stare. I don't think I was supposed to read that. I was supposed to read this. This episode is sponsored by Aura, the heavy-duty cleaning crew that permanently purges your private personal particulars off the internet. If you've ever applied to a job, sought out a serious relationship, or just rented a place to live, you've probably been Googled. But here's the question. What did they find? Almost everyone's address, phone number, and even their family members are right there on the first few pages. Even before I was a public style figure, I tried to guard all this stuff carefully, and I would only reveal personal info when I felt it was absolutely necessary. But when I first searched myself, guess what turned up? Everything. My banks, cell providers, and I'm fairly sure at least one former landlord sold me out and doxed me to data brokers. The worst part is some of this so-called info, like court appearances and criminal records, doesn't exist. These sites straight up made them up to sell background checks or something. There are thousands of these soulless reptiles, and they sell their inventory to each other, which is to say, enough info for anyone to stalk you. This is Aura's business. They pummel data brokers around the globe with opt-out requests until they clear your data, then they rinse and repeat when those scumbags inevitably put it back up. Aura can also monitor your credit score, spot identity fraud, guard your house's title, and alert you when your data get leaked to the dark web. You even get an antivirus, password manager, and VPN, all with no upcharges, no microtransactions, just a suite of professional quality tools that empower you to decide how to best protect yourself. Visit aura.com/ZackFreedman for a free 2-week trial and see who's selling your secrets. That link is in the description, along with printable files for every MakerChip and MakerChip accessory I feature today. That brings us back to an important question. What the hell is a MakerChip anyways? Last April, I went to the Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Fest and decided to shoot a video because I can't leave a good joy unsucked. Shooting footage on a show floor while talking to fans and planning an episode just irons my brain so smooth the Hubble could use it as a mirror. The video was about projects anyone could make, yet I failed to mention the project dozens of people actually did make, the Maker Coin. Maker Coins are small tokens or toys custom designed to print in bulk to swap with other printer people at Printer People pageantry. Ignore the numismatic nomenclature. Maker Coins are almost never coins. My MakerCoin collection has everything from a cocktail coaster to a fidget spinner to a solid metal slammer that can simultaneously flip every pog on eBay. But I think this freedom does more harm than good. Everyone's MakerCoin is a different shape and size, and there's just no good way to display or even really store these. The exception is the MakerChip. All MakerChips are 40mm discs, 3mm thick, the same dimensions as a regulation poker chip. This makes them deliciously satisfying to stack and shuffle, and most importantly, it makes them standardized. You can sort your MakerChip hoard into binder pages, shadow boxes, and even Gridfinity stands. I made this one. Unlike a random shoebox of vaguely coin-esque miscellany, your MakerChip collection is this neat, tidy memory lane of all your 3D printing encounters. The chip does have a weakness. It's intended for multi-material printers. You can design a chip to manually change colors like this MakerBot theme model by Nunya Business 214, and I I even found this one by Knife that prints as 2 separate interlocking segments. But if you're gonna crank out hundreds and hundreds of these things, you really want an AMS, MMU, tool changer, or all 3, you fucking psycho. The MakerChip is so much better than a Maker coin, I felt compelled to make one for myself. I have no idea why this kind of thing motivates me, but like, us ADHD people learn to get our executive function while the getting exists. I began with the MakerChip starter pack by K2 Kevin, kind of the de facto standard template. He has you drag multiple models into your slicer at the same time. A blank disk base, fancy border, logo, QR code, whatever you like, and position them so they're all overlapping. But don't click print. As it stands, the slicer is going to take this literally, and the printer is going to say, well, this G-code's going to make my heat break look like a drunk driver wrapped around a street light, but you know what they say, the customer's always right. It'll then proceed to cheerfully mangle itself trying to print 4 models in the same physical space. But if we select all of them and click merge, we're suddenly playing by a whole different set of rules. Now, if 2 objects of the same color overlap, the slicer automatically combines them. If they're different colors, the slicer carves room in the first object to print the second. Why don't they just do this by default? Point is, K2 Kevin's design now lets us stack up fancy borders, custom logos, whatever the hell you want, and you never have to edit the chip itself. You're also not actually limited to STL files. You can spawn a box, cylinder, sphere, and other random shapes called primitives. Just move, scale, rotate, and create an assembly, and the slicer automatically fuses them into a quick and dirty multi-material doohickey, no modeling required. Prusa Slicer and its progeny also let you invoke a negative object, which can punch holes, shave down surfaces, and even emboss text. You can actually import any STL as a positive or negative object, so feast your eyes on what I'm fairly sure is the world's first anti-benchy. Opening this cube reveals a conspicuous lack of benchy. So that made me wonder, could I design a totally unique MakerChip without ever opening a CAD program? It sounded like the exact flavor of pointless self-inflicted hardship you folks just love to watch me suffer through. It was on. Before I confuse the hell out of people, or worse,
get comments,
I just want to be clear, Bambu Studio, Super Slicer, Orca Slicer, Pantheon Slicer, and I'm fairly sure Anchormake Studio are all forks of Prusa Slicer, and as such, everything I say should apply to all of them. But printer beware, pick one that can slice for all your multi-material printers. Once you start in one slicer, you will never be able to import it into another. No way this could bite me in the ass, no way, no how. I started by moving the blank chip dead center, spawned a big box over it, and hit merge to turn them into a single assembly. I then switched the blank chip into a negative object, then proceeded to drag the box down into the build plate. Normally, Bambu Studio forces every object to touch the build plate, but in assemblies, sub-objects are allowed to float in midair and even sink below sea level. You can then capture the whole assembly as a single STL and spawn it in later, of course losing the ability to edit it. Remember, we can make a negative object out of any STL. So if we create a new project, spam a bunch of random shapes, and then add our new STL as a negative object, the slicer will carve away all the excess and give us a guaranteed accurate poker chip. And with that, our canvas was prepped and it was time to make art. Or at least something that could be mistaken for art from a distance. I decided to add some flavor by turning the stripes into Quagsires, the water ground type Pokemon that's become my channel's unofficial mascot. This locks in our colors, black, blue, and purple. We can only pick 3 because one of my AMS's feeders burned out, and I'll be damned if I do any maintenance on my printers at all. Quagsire's bod is just a circle on a square, and remember, since they're the same color, they will get automatically fused into a single object. I then give them an outline by simply taking those same shapes and scaling them up. Note how the blue shapes are positioned below the black ones in the assembly list. When 2 objects overlap and they're different colors, the one that's lower on the list will always take priority. The physical positions are completely ignored. Keep these rules in mind as we give Quagsire a little personality. First, his adorable Quagsire face, just 2 circles and 3 rectangles. I also spent like way too much time debating what angle to make the corners of Quagsire's mouth, and I end up settling this by flipping a Maker coin, though I'm not sure if I trust this particular coin's taste, or the fact that it's flippable. Also note how the Quaggy bod protrudes past the rim. We're going to be using this template to carve everything back into shape, so there's no reason to waste time being neat. I decided I want this on the bottom, so I moved them physically to the plate and then dragged them down in the assembly list. This list doesn't auto-scroll when you're trying to rearrange the objects, so I had to drag each thing line by line, screen by screen. So let's add 75 more. The top side will be Quagsire's buttocks, so it needs his iconic purple splotch and dark stripe. Note how the discs and box are wafer thin. Details only need to be about 0.8 millimeters thick to completely mask the color below, and if you overdo it, you're just wasting print time and filament for nothing. Optimizing your model like this is generally not worth the work, but when you're running off thousands of copies, these seconds and grams really start stacking up. Quagsire is looking adorable, so now we need 6 of them evenly spaced around the rim. There's no circular pattern feature to help us deploy our Pokemon prayer circle, and when we copy and paste, we have no control over where the slicer puts the copies. Our only option is sleazy, greasy, slimy jank. I changed the blank chip from a solid object to a support blocker to make it translucent. Then I dropped a tiny sphere primitive dead center. I then cloned the whole assembly 5 times, rotated the multiples of 60 degrees, and then used those spheres to manually align each copy with the original. I had no choice but to do this all freehand, so the Quagsires ended up fractions of millimeters off center. This is more or less invisible on the finished chip, but now you know it's there, and you'll never unknow it. Finally, I selected all 6 Quaggy boys, merged them, and cleaned up the now unnecessary spheres. I'm only now realizing how close this brushed with death. Objects are only allowed to float in midair when they're in an assembly. Any loose object is instantly, automatically, and unoverridably forced to the plate. If Bambu Studio implicitly broke the assemblies into objects and then rolled the objects into one big Katamari assembly, I would have to manually reposition every part of this Quagsire 6 times. That might not sound that hard, but remember, I won't be able to click on them to select them because they're now covering each other. I inadvertently dodged a bullet the size of the average Rust programmer's butt plug. It just wouldn't be a business card without the name of the business on it, so let's drop in the Voidstar logo. I found the site SVG to STL that turns SVG vectors into printable STLs. It's a wonderful name. You don't actually need this if you're using Prusa Slicer, because that has this built right in. Bambu Studio was not really the right choice. I really hope there are no further knock-on effects. I dragged in the logo and prepare for a classic Zack Freedman facepalm moment. My logo is an outline, but Bambu Studio wouldn't let me fill it in. The paint bucket would only color the whole disc. I wasted over an hour trying to color within the lines before I realized there is no within the lines to color. I didn't actually engrave the logo into the disc. I just used this goofy slicer hack to make it look like I did. I had to clone the logo and disc, make the logo a negative object, export the result as new STL, import it into the real chip, and now there are lines between which I can paint. Sigh. There's also this obnoxious bug in Bambu Studio that draws the cutting plane over the shit you're trying to paint, and I'm gonna blame that for why I accidentally filled in the loop in the letter B. That should be purple. I only realized after printing like 300 of these things, now you're gonna suffer too. You can stop watching. Don't stop watching. It still didn't look poker chippy enough, so I dropped in some contrasting cylinders and boxes to give it that classic wagon wheel look. But I got lazy, and instead of doing the whole lining up little spheres thing again, I just positioned the spokes freehand. That's why these 2 lines are disconnected in every single MakerChip. Can one parasocially sigh with resignation? Because that's what I aim to make you do. Along with liking, commenting, clicking the subscribe button, and joining our Patreon. After all, what are token gestures of algorithmic and monetary support, if not the capitalist equivalents of a sigh of resignation? With the obverse sufficiently emblazoned, allow us to service the undercarriage. Normally this site has a QR code, but what if people forget what I look like? We are gonna slap my face on the bottom of the MakerChip. In a previous episode, I featured HueForge, a paid program that turns raster images into unbelievably crisp prints, but it's just not the right tool for the job. HueForge works by spitting out thin, intricate layers that will jack up the print time. Besides, we don't need HueForge. We have HueForge at home. HueForge is to anchor make picture to STL what a scalpel is to a broken beer bottle. So I messed this up. It's actually called Anchor Make 3D Paint, not Picture to STL, although in my defense, their name sucks. I simply imported a frame from a video into Photoshop, I isolated my face and messed with the levels and stuff till it was nice and contrasty. I just dropped them all on the plate, merged them, and let the slicer sort it out. It actually came out pretty nice. All I had to do was cut it into a circle and plop it onto the chip. Just gotta cut it into a circle. Oh, piss fiddles. So here's the issue. Negative objects don't follow the list order priority thing. They always slice through the whole assembly. So to frame my face all nice and circly, I had to create another template STL like I did with the chip, import the template as a negative object, export the result as an STL, and then add the cutout files to my main chip assembly. It's the exact same operation I used to paint inside the logo lines, except this time it wouldn't work. The export as STL feature of the Prusa Slicer cinematic universe has a known issue. It's basically worthless. The slicer is perfectly capable of doing the math, because my face would slice into a circle, but something in the software just refused to export it as an STL. I tried repairing, decimating, but I just could not fucking cut my fucking face into a fucking circle. AnchorMake wouldn't help either. Picture to STL ignores the alpha channel and always outputs a rectangle. So as stupid as this sounds, I had to abandon this idea and go back to a QR code because I couldn't slice my face into a circle. I am sure there was some workaround, but it was already 6 a.m. I still hadn't printed anything, and my last pair of firing synapses were starting to flaccify. Did I mention I did this entire project in a single all-nighter? So we need a QR code STL, and the place to turn a QR code into an STL is QR code to STL. Why are they all named something to STL? It's a conspiracy! Wake up, shit! I dropped the results into my assembly where it conveniently landed at the physical and list bottom, where it's the highest priority, and it would print on the bottom. Yeah. I had just one feature left to add. Technically, subtract. I created a disc 26 millimeters in diameter and 0.6 millimeters thick. I changed it to a negative object and I positioned it dead center. Then I sliced the whole enchilada and set a pause on the first layer that covered that void. If you saw my cursed printing tricks episode, you know exactly where this is going. When the print pauses, I'm going to slip in an NFC tag and resume the print to seamlessly trap it inside. That's right, if you got my MakerChip at OpenSauce, it has had a hidden NFC tag inside it the entire time. What will you discover when you scan it? You will have to get one to find out because I'm not going to spoil it. Formatting and flashing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of chips by hand, but when you see what I put on it, your disappointment will make it all worth it. The moment had finally come to hit print and see what happens when you design a project entirely in the slicer in a single night while also printing chocolate Nerf blasters. I may have also been drunk. Survey says, actually pretty close. One of the Quagsire's mouths was missing a cheek. At some point, I dragged it above the Quagsire's body in the object list. The blue QR code was also a little muddy against the purple. I considered reversing them, but I just tucked a square under the QR code. And with that, my model-less model was complete. I hand-filled the plate to capacity. Capacity is 29, in case you're curious. The auto-arrange doesn't account for the negative volumes. Neither does the thumbnail generator, and this looks extremely unnerving on my X1C's touchscreen. I loaded some Prusa Galaxy Black, Polymaker Slate, and CookieCAD Lavender, and 12 hours later, goddamn! Then I remembered, I have a second multi-material printer. My tool changer has 4 extruders, but Bambu Studio doesn't support its RepRap firmware. So I set up Orca Slicer, a fork that does. But why is the single extruder multi-material checkbox grayed out? There's no support for tool changers because Bambu only makes filament changers. Prusa Slicer can slice for the X1C and the tool changer, and in fact the multi-extruder stuff works better because the Prusa XL is a tool changer. Prusa Slicer will not open Bambu's fully compatible 3MF file. If I wanted to run this chip on 2 printers, I would have to completely redesign it from scratch in Prusa Slicer. So I didn't. I'd like to thank Aura for sponsoring this video and you for watching it. If we met up at OpenSauce, thank you so much for being radical, and if we didn't, well, you can still get one of these bad boys because I'm gonna give the final 500 away to my Patreon patrons. These ones are even shiny. I use my fancy holographic plate. If you support me on Patreon, no matter what tier, send me a DM on Patreon with your address, and if I have any MakerChips left, I will snail mail you one. If you're outside North America, there's a fairly high chance a bureaucrat is going to confiscate it, because I ain't filling out no customs forms. If yours doesn't arrive, I guess you helped me make more videos for no reason. And please don't procrastinate. I have over 1,000 patrons, but only like 500 more chips, and when they are out, I am done with this bullshit. Join the Patreon, send me your address, get a poker chip with Quagsires on one side, sparkles on the other, and secrets within. Patreon.com/Zack Freedman. Or print your own at the link below. I feel like this should go without saying, but you're gonna need a Bambu printer. But my patrons deserve more than a single shitty 3D print. Everyone who supports me gets access to Q&A streams and special mini videos, plus our lab assistants have a 3 out of X chance of getting a shout out, where X is the number of lab assistants on the battlefield. Today's are Lawn Makes, Phil Sador, and Drew. Quagsires worldwide prostrate themselves before our magnificent collaborators. These hegemons of Pokemons are Carl Tunsell, Chuck Me Harder Baby, Scott Rinry, Bitrot, Schleppy the Schwagster, The Suits Ruined Our Fun, SXP, The Benevolent Misanthrope, Microwave, Turner Zay, and Zombo DB. I've hidden their names in an Easter egg and made them permanent parts of our 3D printing workshop. I'm even gonna print them up some super special limited edition golden MakerChips, because I love them. Not parasocially, I want to f them. And finally, our lab assistant supporters. These loquacious sesquipedalians abhor brevity to such an extent, I only have time for the first 20 characters of their names. Thank you, Dennis Kempin, Doomcrow Inc., Yes, Viwatch, Circle Zero, Clayton Easley, Talon Democratic Sock, Travis Pocky, Callsign Carrot, Joseph Ribka, Thunder Chicken, Crash Doom, Kathy and Brent Irvine, Earth is 3D Printed Goog, Brad Cox, Noby Johnson, Roger Pinkham of Mike Kelly, Cameron McPherson, Robert the Bobs, Anforian, Jack Moran, Nova Wren, Rusty Flute, Scroto Saggins, Olive Robbins, Bob Dobbington, Kevin DeGraff, Michael Creamer Jr., Quality Doggo, Granville Schmidt, Ergay, SKL, Shane Frederick, Kevin Sumner, Bill Schooler, Good Lady Nat Queen O, Zack, one of those Zacks, Cameron Ogletree, Boulder Creek Yard, Net Hire Abervard, Vigelli, Nuclear 314, Good Suck, Probably Not 3 Racco, Martin Titonium, Renaud Bataille, Jigglema Puffs, Land Jesus Will Die, that one's dark, The Monk, Bryn 6'5" Figure, Jason, Tactical Possum, General Buck Turgids, Powerful CCH, Mitch 3D, The 3D Print, Paul Gibbs, Dax Dastardly Seeks, What? Evan Kinney, Danny Devoid of Life, Kermit the OG Frog, Sean Loves Jen, Cullen J. Webb, Haley Kerman, My Dog is a Bear, Steve's Dad, Quantumly Tangled, Protagonist, The Haunted Leaky Watt, The Cuttle Fish, Azunda Wielder of Eye, Onyx Plague, Slippy McToof, Acorn Agent Maxwell, Burn It, The Cune, Unicorn Emoji, No Disassemble, Spire, Period Clots, Blammo, Socks McGawk, Sunburnt Cat, Burn Duck 3, 6A, 6F, etc., etc., Cliff Henning, I Think I Changed My, Amanishi, Iron Rain, Zach Harvey, Jamie, Eddie, Partial Eclipse, It's, The Snow Chow Cabal, DBD, Chris Floofy Kitsune, Max Luck is Going To, Big Bird Tommy, What Trans Rights, Timor, Cody, Craft Computing, Stormy Design, Travis Hippa, Dale B, Michael Runhart, Lydia K, Dr. Mrs. the Merman, Aaron Steers, Elite Giant, Sorceress, MLE, Robert Burry, Sticks Like the River, Michael, Trump Did Nothing, VK2KTJ, Zap, QFE Rad Dad, One Laconic Dude. If it's your first month, I'll read your name in full. Carnarmon, Not a Dig, Just Human Garbage, Robo Kimau, Incognito, Kink Shaming Walrus, Even Bluetooth has Dennis Baldonado, Moonkin, Rihanna 99, and Urch, Amir Rahum, and Alfinger. Micah, is that you? Nobody else knows about Alfinger. Thanks for watching, and wherever the chips fall, I'll see you in the future.